It's been a busy day for Rio Tinto. So far today, Rio Tinto has announced a $15.2 billion rights issue, an iron ore joint venture with rival BHP Billiton, and an official end to its massive deal with China's state-run aluminium producer Chinalco. With us today, we have Morningstar Senior Resources Analyst Mark Taylor to help us make sense of it all. Mark, welcome.
Thanks, Vicky.
First, let's talk about Chinalco. Is Rio's exit from this tie-up good news or bad news for retail investors?
I think it's excellent news for shareholders. It was no secret that we were never great fans of Rio having Chinalco in its business units and on its register. We always felt that it wasn't a good idea for Rio to be selling crown jewel assets, for starters, and then to have a major competitor and customer in some marketing joint ventures and quite likely having significant influence over pricing policy, despite assurances to the contrary.
Okay, let's talk about this mega merger. Rio Tinto and BHP Billiton are merging all of their iron ore production in the Pilbara. What do you make of this move, Mark?
I think it's a very sensible move. These companies have complementary iron ore assets and infrastructure. There's been some duplication of infrastructure and would likely have been more required in the future if they had continued to operate as separate entities. And this is a great way to save money and costs and do something that's eminently sensible, assuming it gets regulatory approval.
Rio and BHP have estimated their savings from this venture at $10 billion US. Would you guess that their savings would be higher than this or lower?
It's not, absolutely clear what that $10 billion represents. They've described it as a $10 billion US NPV value. So the savings could be higher and lower depending on whether you're talking about operating costs or capital costs. Time will tell. I'm not going to get too hung up on the number, and the reality is that quite often these agreements result in unforeseen benefits in the future, and that's more the key from my perspective.
Now, the rights issue. The rights issue is $15.2 billion US. That's nearly 19 billion Australian. Would you estimate that this is enough for Rio to meet its debt load going forward? And how does it place them in the future?
It is enough to meet their heavy debt load, and it places them in a very strong position. The equity raising in conjunction with the cash injection that BHP will be making allows them to cover both the 2009 and 2010 bullet payments comfortably. And it'll leave them with very conservative gearing and allow them to re-accelerate or reactivate their capital expenditure programs and expansion programs. So with cash flow, very strong position, yep.
However, the shares are being sold at a huge discount to Rio Tinto's last traded price of $66.90. Where does this leave retail investors, Mark?
Well, retail investors are in a very happy position of either being able to subscribe for the new shares, take up their entitlements at a big discount to market, and retain ownership in a much stronger company than would have been the case without the capital raising. If they don't have the funds to subscribe to new shares, the entitlements are tradable, so they can sell those entitlements on market and get compensation for the fact that their holding will be diluted by the lower priced stock that's coming on.
It seems that big changes have been afoot for Rio ever since they bought Alcan 2 years ago at the top of the market. Is this the end of this saga for Rio?
To a degree, but it's not over till it's over, and there's still a regulatory approval required for the iron ore joint venture. Still has to get shareholder approval. We don't foresee any problems there, but you never know. And there's also this negative pall that's hanging over the board. I mean, shareholders ultimately have ended up in a good spot, but they won't appreciate having been dragged through this whole messy saga to get there. and it's quite possible that the board could have a different complexion in the not too distant future.
Mark, thank you for taking time to join us today.
You're welcome.